ephemeral things which sort of are there and aren't there, not explicitly in the content of the HTML, but are somehow still there, a sort of pseudo element. They do exist. CSS pseudo elements are strange things in that they are content created in the CSS side that are not explicitly created on the HTML side. For every content element you make, you get two freebies. You get a before and after that you can style in the CSS and create completely unique styles for. These can inherit actual text content, but they also are tied position-wise to the core element, which have benefits and drawbacks. If we make a simple thing, I am div, I can now target my div, the usual way, border 1 pixel red, boom. But then if I add an additional setting for div, but with : before, 2 pixels blue solid, what I'm able to do here is create additional styles for something which will always precede the content of that div. And as you can see, it can override or match or differ somewhat from the existing styles. The reason it's not showing immediately, as you'd see, is because it doesn't have a content setting on it. And this is the only real gotcha with pseudo properties. If you don't include a content property, it doesn't exist. It doesn't render on the page. It doesn't exist in the markup at all. If I add content, even an empty content tag, you can immediately see now that there is that blue box in the corner. That's your element. It doesn't display very well because it's inline and we've not added any content. So if I add a display block, there we have a full box. I proceed as the content, and there we go. You can see inside that red box is a blue box, which is the before content, and that's really it. You can additionally set an after. It works in the same way, and as you'd expect, I set that to yellow. This goes after. So this has got all kinds of applications if you start thinking about it. Quotation marks, you think about wrapping quotation marks around a quote. You can make sure you can add content to always be at the beginning and the end. Some sort of separator, if you want to add like bullet points to separate multiple elements, you can just set these blocks to always precede or follow an element. Icons, think about if you always want an icon to have a label afterwards, some sort of scenario where you're showing your Twitter, Facebook icons, you could set the icon to be a before pseudo element. Something like tooltips would work really well because the tooltip has to stay in the same place as the content. And this is in a situation where I can style something completely different, but no, because it's a pseudo element, it's going to be tied. Because it's a pseudo element, it's going to be tied to the element. Maybe when it hovers, it shows and hides, and it's not going to lose positioning somehow and mess up. So it's got all those benefits. You might sometimes hear about the single div challenge, or people talking about they did a single div design, and that's usually that someone has managed to build something really impressive using a single div and CSS just to create an illustration or something quite nice. And that will massively make use of the before and after, because you need those two bonus elements to make extra render elements on the page, and really just shows you the amazing extra capacity you can get now using a pseudo element. If there is a flaw to this, it could be that as an HTML purist, you believe that the content goes in the HTML, the styling goes in the CSS. Here, because of that content property, you're starting to move content into CSS. So if you were to actually add full captions and labels into CSS, it could be confusing for people working on your code to know where the content is, because now it's split over HTML and CSS. Got to consider things like translations, or if you need to make changes to that, is that accessible now that it's tucked away in CSS rather than on your main content file? Might depend on how you're rendering. But beyond that, it's quite an exciting thing, and it gives a great deal of extra capability to a CSS developer. There are other properties. So the placeholder text for an input box, that's a sort of pseudo element. The actual selection, so when you click and highlight text, you can get that selection. You can style that to be any color you want. And there are other ones like the first line, first letter. They're much less commonly used. The before and after are the ones that are going to give you the most capability out of the box. So there it is. That's pseudo elements in just a few minutes. Give it a go. Try them out. Let me know how it goes. Thanks.